Liquefied Natural Gas NLNG Act 2017 by the House of Representatives has been met with mixed feelings, especially from some players in the oil and gas sector, of course, who described it as anti-investment and not in the interests of the country. For starters, let's listen to Oyeyemi Ajayi's backgrounder to set the tune for our conversation.
The Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas NLNG was established in 1989 to produce liquefied natural gas for Nigerian export. It is a joint venture with Nigeria having 49% equity share, and it is represented by NNPC alongside Shell, Total and ENI petroleum companies having their shares as well. With a capital outlay of $6 billion, NLNG has generated over $90 billion in revenue. Despite this growing success, there have been issues and concerns over the company's operations, which include the non-payment of 3% of NLNG's annual budget to NDDC and the removal of guarantees and assurances provided for in the existing act. This and the fact that flaring activities by the company have resulted to more environmental and health hazards in the Niger Delta made many to question the rationale behind the company's existence. Consequently, more groups and individuals started seeking answers to some of the issues. The NLNG became a subject of debate at the House of Representatives, leading to a proposed amendment to the Act establishing the organization. The amendment seeks the prevention of total degradation of the oil-producing communities in the Niger Delta region, which is said to have extensively depleted the ecosystem over a long period of time. The proposal had Section 7B to the Principal Act, which provides that notwithstanding Section 7 or any other provision of this Act, the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Limited shall pay 3% of its total annual budget to the Niger Delta Development Commission Fund as required by Section 14, subsection 1 and 2B of the NDDC Act, Establishment Act 2000. While the new amendment has been passed by the House of Representatives, the Senate is yet to commence debate on the amendment for concurrence and subsequent passage for presidential assent. Just like the NLNG, the proposed amendment has generated controversy as representatives of the organization kick against such move, which they see as counterproductive. They argue that it is against the national interest as it will prevent more foreign investors in addition to gulping almost 40% of NLNG's earnings.
All right, thank you very much there, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for that background report. Now we have guests with us here in the studios to discuss this subject matter in greater detail. First, we'd like to welcome Honorable Leo Ogo, who is the Minority Leader of the House of Representatives and the sponsor of the bill on the amendment of the NLNG Act. Honorable Leo Ogo, a pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we also have with us here in the studios Dr. Kudo Eresia Eke, is General Manager External Relations of the Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas Limited. Dr. Kudo Eke, a pleasure to have you on the program.
Good morning, Nigeria. Nice to be here.
Okay, and also with us is a lawyer, of course, a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, the former Secretary General of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mazi Afam Osigwe. Mazi, I'd like to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you so very much.
Okay. All right, if we have connections to other one or two of our network centers, we'll get a guest to join us from that remote location. First, as we indicated, Leo Ogo, you're the sponsor of the bill that's kicked up quite some dust. In the first instance, what again are what was your motivation for seeking an amendment to an act that appears, to stakeholders in particular and then shareholders that all is well?
Well, first, let me thank you for this wonderful opportunity and be able to throw some light in respect of this proposed amendment. Let me state that the LNG Act itself was a decree passed far back 1989. And by the clear provision of Section 315, it became an act of the National Assembly, subject to some level of modifications. That is what the opening provision states. When you look at that particular act, you will see some kind of obnoxious clauses. Fortunately for us, the geopolitical zone where they are operating at the moment has this NDDC. The National Assembly, in their wisdom, passed an act stipulating clearly that all oil companies and gas processing companies should contribute 3% of their budget to the development of the zone. Fortunately, all the oil companies are abiding by this act. LNG is a company where the federal government has 49% stake, making them the majority shareholders. So it is so sad and unfortunate that such a company where we have such a huge stake will not contribute in line with an enactment of a National Assembly to the development of the zone. Based on some of these unacceptable, obnoxious incentives, we decided to say no. To simplify this issue, let's make a clear provision and state it black and white in their act that they are to contribute this 3% in line with what other people are doing. Because when you watch this zone itself, this is the zone that produces the golden egg. And we have all, in all agreement, stated that this zone itself has suffered so much deprivation, high pollution, gas flaring has become the order of the day, major health challenges, and a host of other polluted implications. These people need some level of implementation of touch as from these oil majors. And I think this thing, for me, if you ask, is even to the advantage of LNG, because we are trying on the long run to provide further security in making sure that the place is safe for them to even do their business. You know, so I really don't see anything wrong in this amendment, because when you look at the act itself, as it is, the incentives are supposed to be for a period of time. It is not an open-ended incentive. You don't just sit in an office and enjoy an open-ended incentive. Government earns its revenue from taxes. So if a government will not get its revenue from taxes, then I think at the end of the day there will be no government. You know, so I really want to see what is the grievance, the mistakes, or the mischief that they see in this amendment.
All right, let me refer you to an interview you granted sometime, and a quotation by you, you know, as an important reason for, you know, sponsoring this bill for the amendment. You said it is important, just to take your quotation in part, it is very important that we appreciate the enormity of the danger present in the region for us to act quick and as a people hold the NLNG responsible for unnecessary gas flaring using this amendment. Can you tell us a bit of what you know about the is that statement by you? Did you grant that interview?
I probably may have to recall.
Yes, but you were quoted to have said that it is necessary to hold the NLNG responsible for unnecessary gas flaring using this amendment.
No, at that, LNG does not go into gas flaring. Okay. It is the oil majors.
Okay. So you do agree that LNG does not...
They are a gas processing company.
Okay.
In line with the NDDC Act. Okay. Gas processing companies are supposed to contribute 3% of their budget. And it is here very clear in black and white. Look at it here. 3% of their total annual budget of oil-producing companies operating onshore and offshore in the Niger Delta area, including gas processing companies. You know, so to me, I really want to see the problems that this whole amendment will cause, because we're hearing a lot of...
So you do not hold the NLNG responsible for gas flaring?
No, not at all,
okay.
Not at all.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, Honorable Leogo, we'll come back to you. You've given the rationale for sponsoring the bill, a number of issues. Happily, we have Kudo Eresia Eke here with us, because he's been working in LNG for quite a while. You know, of course, the legal issues that Honorable Leogo is raising. What is the attitude of NLNG to this whole proposal to amend the enabling law?
Well, the attitude of Nigeria LNG is that is of defense of Nigeria, because we see this act as one that is inimical to the economy and the progress of Nigeria. As I sit here, it's my desire that many Nigerians do listen, and listen well.
And they are listening,
Yeah.
of course, because we're the largest television network, by the way. Yes.
Now, this argument had gone to court. First, let me admit that most of us here are laymen. These arguments had gone to court. NDDC had taken Nigeria LNG to court. And this case had gone through all the layers of court, up to the Supreme Court of the land. And all the judgments had been in favor of Nigeria LNG. Now, so what is happening here is that having failed at the Supreme Court, NDDC now goes to the National Assembly to get the National Assembly to change the law. This is a dangerous precedent for Nigeria. After the Supreme Court has ruled, you then go to the National Assembly.
Sorry, for the benefit of our viewers, what was the substance of the litigation?
That is it.
Essentially, exactly the point that 3% of our annual budget should be paid to NDDC. And our argument is simple. First of all, luckily he has admitted that Nigeria LNG is a cleaner of the environment and not a desecrator of the environment in any way, which is great. Now, the spirit of the NDDC Act is to ensure that those who produce from Niger Delta recompense in some form. Nigeria LNG doesn't produce anything from the Niger Delta. What it does is that it buys gas. It buys gas the same way that fertilizer companies buy gas. It buys gas the same way that petrochemical companies buy gas. It buys gas the same way that electricity companies buy gas. So it is targeted for reasons that are not obvious to us, at least. In addition to that, and which is the greater concern, is that it took Nigeria 30 years of struggle to get Nigeria LNG. 30 years since the late 50s. It was not until 1989 when an act, which he called the decree, was put in place that investors then had confidence to invest. It took them only 3 weeks after the act was put in place for the investment to be made, to show you that the backbone upon which the company rests is indeed that act. And the government gave guarantees and assurances which have been validated over numerous administrations to say that those guarantees and assurances will not be tampered with. Indeed, the central bank governor wrote letters reassuring. The Minister of Finance wrote letters reassuring. The Minister of Justice and Attorney General wrote letter reassuring. Those are the strengths upon which these investments were made. Now, our worry is, if we become a promise breaker, a desecrator of sanctimonious agreements, non-abiding with agreements, then Nigeria becomes a pariah. We are not in that state now. We need all the help we can get. We need finance. We need investments in our nation. This is Nigeria's most successful company. If we could do this to our own, what signal are we sending to the rest of the world? And in addition to that, I'd just like to say that this is the beginning, if we allow this go, of the end of Nigeria LNG, because you're really hitting at the taproot, the foundation of the company, at the time when the world, we all know what the oil prices are, we all know what energy prices are. When everybody's supporting their own oil and gas companies to prosper, you find that happening in the United States, you find that happening in Malaysia, in Oman, in every part of the world. Here in Nigeria, we are digging at the foundation of our representation in the world, as far as that's concerned.
All right, Kudo Eke, just one more time, for the benefit of our viewers. The Supreme Court, you said, decided on the case involving 3% payment of 3% of the annual budget of the NLNG. What was the substance of that decision? What we call the ratio in law. I'm not a layman, by the way. I found it's not as well. On what basis did the Supreme Court give its decision? They did say that the NDDC could not ask or request or expect NLNG to pay. What was the grievance?
Basically, it was my view. It was a respect for the guarantees and assurances. To say these guarantees have been given, there ought to be no amendment to this decree. In any case, or this act. And in any case, most of don't worry the plea of the word of decree act, because most of the laws we abide by today anyway, and the National Assembly will comply, they are mostly decrees. So there's no begging that question. So in any case, this, just to tell you, if NLNG begin to witness the demise of NLNG, it is because of this. At this time, we need investment of at least $1 billion annually to keep NLNG running full. Now, the money is going to be coming straight again from the investors. But with this kind of behavior, this kind of attitude, this kind of amendments, obviously that kind of money will not be coming. We need 25 billion because we are expanding. We need 25 billion again from investors, imminent, that's supposed to come in a year or two. Now, this is the same amendment that will drive all of those away. We're talking about the Niger Delta. If we went into the Train 7, 18,000 jobs would be created. Now, I want you to imagine the level of security that we can have and peace if we're able to provide 18,000 jobs. That we are kicking away because of this amendment. But all hope is not lost, because I believe that the Senate is there and they're listening, and most of them have business persuasions, and we'll do something about this.
Let's bring Mr. Mazi Afam. Mazi Afam, this appears to be, a legal issue. The Supreme Court, the Apex Court had ruled on this, but let's hear from you. Is there any issue with the act setting up the NLNG that we really don't understand, or the National Assembly doesn't understand?
Now, when a nation goes into business transaction with companies in, if you permit my use of that word, in a volatile region like the Niger Delta, and where multi-billion-dollar investments will be involved, there are usually assurances and guarantees given so that these investors will be assured that their investments will be protected not only from expropriation, but so that there will be certainty before they go into that terrain. And I think that gives rise to the NLNG Act. And by that act, Nigeria gave assurances that, look, if you invest, the fiscal regimes will be protected by this act, and we're not going to do anything to alter that without the written consent of the government, the shareholders, and the company. And by the unilateral attempt by the National Assembly to amend this law to impose a levy, which the Supreme Court has ruled that the NDDC cannot impose on the NLNG, Nigeria is breaking that assurance and is making Nigeria a doubtful destination by foreign investors. And coming at a time when Nigeria is in their need of foreign direct investment, this sends a terrible signal. Nobody would want to invest. And security does not mean getting more money. It's ensure that there will be flow of investment into that area to create employment, so that people will be sure that their investment is protected, so that laws that if really enacted by a country will be respected. And I think we're not doing that at this time.
Okay, let me, I'm the only layman here. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
I need to step in.
Yes, but just hold on. I need to also ask, you have mentioned the part that the act setting up the NLNG, provides that for any amendment to be done, it has to be in agreement, to written consent of all the parties involved. But there are also other clauses to that act, which says that, first of all, it has to be, the holidays, would expire within a period of time.
Correct.
Which is 10 years.
And there are tax incentives, tax holiday.
Yes,
there's tax holiday and fiscal regime. There are different things.
Just a moment, you enlighten us. And then the second part of it, of the act, also says that, whichever comes first, that it expires when the cumulative sales price of gas, attains a particular, price level, which is $3 US. That's from when you celebrate your anniversary.
Let me save you the trouble. All the incentives have all expired.
Thank you.
Nigeria LNG is now paying tax, which is the reason Nigeria LNG is the highest tax-paying institution in Nigeria. To date, we have paid $5.5 billion in taxes. What are we talking about? Nigeria LNG has provided $15 billion of dividends. What are we talking about? We have paid 51 billion naira in terms of levies and taxes.
Is LNG paying levy to NIMASA?
Of course, you know that's
It's
in court.
disputed, I
It is precisely because of these elements of the Act.
Okay.
All right, all right, Leo, I mean, you were eager to say something.
Yeah.
Go ahead and then I have
Let
a
me first
question
and
for you,
foremost
please.
state very clearly that, I'm hearing from you from the first time. I've been looking at this whole report. I'm not aware that this matter got to the Supreme Court, but that is not even on place. I knew it ended up at the Court of Appeal. Now, let's call a spade, and let's be very, very sincere to ourselves. You see, where you look at the ownership structure, you are telling us you have paid $5 billion to the federal government. Yes. But let me also tell you that the federal government invested in line with the risk of knowing that they were doing business. I'll give you a clear ownership structure of this company, which is made up of Shell, Total, and ENI. These are the same IOCs. When you look at that agreement, Doctor, look at the sincerity in that agreement. Custom duties you don't pay. All right? You don't pay any duties. We're talking about the Project Nigeria. Are we talking about how we can develop this country? Because you're speaking as if somebody is trying to tax LNG. No, nobody is trying to do that. What we are saying is that LNG is a going concept that is doing business in this country. You look at the revenue profile of that company. I am not interested, but I'm a stakeholder because I'm part of the federal government. I have invested, federal government money has been invested. Now, look at what price, the price at which you are even buying gas, which are not even the subject matter of today. Because you are taking the same gas at almost a ridiculous price, process it and sell. But good, because we are stakeholders. But if the law of your land, of which you are a citizen, stipulate clearly that this is what should be done, how do you expect me, as a lawmaker, line by line, the provisions of the Constitution, to accept those obnoxious clauses that are inserted in that act? It is totally unacceptable.
Which are the obnoxious clauses?
You say you will not pay anything, custom duties, you won't pay, even your subcontractors don't pay custom duties. And who are these subcontractors? It's the same IOCs. So let's be fair to ourselves.
Okay, Honorable Leo Ogo.
Yes, please.
Now, as you rightly indicated, and that's the spirit and letter of the Constitution, the LNG decree is a deemed act of the National Assembly. And the provisions therein are also clear. Provisions of the LNG Act, which is being amended now, namely that for you to tamper with the clear provisions of that act, you'll seek the concurrence of the shareholders. Was it such a big challenge as a sponsor of the bill to say, look, listen, this is what we are seeking to do. Why don't we seek the concurrence of the shareholders?
They will have that privilege at the public hearing. That is the essence of having a public hearing. They will be invited. I will not go to LNG and tell them I want to amend this act. The essence of them coming in to contribute their own comment is done at the public hearing. Let me also advise here that as a lawmaker, guided by the provision of Section 4, Sub 2 of the Constitution, we can amend laws, we can repeal acts, and reenact laws.
That's right.
Now, if you are given the privilege and the opportunity by 360 members to come and defend a specific clause that they consider that is alien to the process of lawmaking, it is your responsibility to come and do that. So that privilege is clearly given to them, and they were in the public hearing.
What again, for the benefit of our viewers who may not have had access to reports arising from the public hearing, what vibrations did you get from the IOCs in terms of their responses to the proposed amendment?
Well, first, I think the drive there for them was purely profit, and they went totally against it. But what I am saying, and what we are saying as Parliament, is that, fine, you should do your business, but you must pay taxes to the government. If the law says that this is what you should pay it. You see, there are some clauses there that we said you can as well allow them to go with those clauses. Because my strong belief is that national interest comes before any individual interest. And I don't want you people to be looking at LNG as if it is privately owned.
What is the national interest in this?
The national interest is that we must collectively contribute to the development of this country. It is impossible for a company to sit in our office and say, no, we will not respect this law. This is what we will respect. This is the law we will not respect. It is not done in any country. And I want to ask the LNG, In which country? Tell me any of the countries in this world that you can enjoy such incentives that you are enjoying here.
Yes.
Kudo, all right, okay, go ahead.
I can tell you.
We'll have another question for you.
Qatar enjoys similar incentives.
An open-ended incentive.
Oman, supported by government, enjoys similar incentives. Malaysia enjoys similar incentives. Angola, next door, enjoys similar incentives. Indeed, the United States now is supporting its own gas companies to do virtually the same. So there is no question that nations that are interested in the development of the oil and gas have to invest. Qatar earns now $61 billion annually out of this. Nigeria earns has earned up to 15 billion, and more could still be earned if we support that. Let me also say this. Let me also say this. Now, let me put it in context. What Nigeria invested was 2.5 billion. Now,
2.5 what?
$2.5 billion.
In when?
Okay? $2.5 billion. What it has, you're not the interviewer, what it has earned as of today, is multiples of that. $15 billion in terms of dividends. The company has generated $90 billion in terms of revenues.
Beautiful.
It has paid through gas purchase $23 billion. Now, it has paid in terms of taxes. It ranks the highest, as I mentioned, $5.5 billion. What else do you expect a good company to deliver?
Okay, all right. Kudo Eke, thanks a lot. But let's take a look at that's Mazi Afamosigwe, because Dr. Kudo Eresia Eke made the point that, look, the fact that the Supreme Court has already, according to him, given a decision on this matter, therefore it will be obnoxious to seek to pass a piece of legislation that will counteract what the Supreme Court has decided. Quite clearly, I mean, in jurisprudence, one of the ways to change the law, assuming, the courts have so decided, is to return to the legislature. Is there anything wrong with going back to the legislature if, of course, the matter went to court and the litigant, of course, got defeated, and you can have recourse to the National Assembly to pass a law?
Well, let me say the fact that judiciary has interpreted the NDCC Act to say, oh, no, it does not apply to the NLNG, does not mean that the legislature cannot do that. But my worry is that we have a wrong way of approaching things. If the law has provided a safety net and say, look, we can amend this law, but you should get the parties to agree in writing. What is so difficult about doing that? And if I may ask again, sir, why should it be at the stage of public hearing that the companies will get the opportunity to say whether they consent or not? Since the government is an investor in this company and has given these assurances and guarantees, what's so difficult about government sitting down with them and saying, you know what? If you are not paying customs, I think you should pay. We are losing so much money. We are talking about trains 7 and 8. With respect to trains 1 to 6, you should pay customs duty, or we should pay a certain percentage on the proposed trains. Now, we think you should contribute something to the NDDC, and the parties sit down and reach an agreement which is passed on to the legislature to perform their duties, because it is taken that the current legislature has fettered its discretion by giving these assurances and guarantees. Because if they go ahead to amend it without getting this consent, there will be consequences to be faced by Nigeria. It does not mean they cannot amend it, but there will be financial consequences, and investor confidence will be affected, and investors may withhold further investment in the project. What is so difficult about reaching this agreement? Why put the cart before the horse? Why draft a bill and say, I must do it? And again, I must caution about the choice of language being used may tend to portray the legislature are trying to incite the host communities against such companies by making it look as if they are your problem, they don't want to contribute to your development. And this need not be so. Parties can sit down in a round table.
But the host communities are already raising issues with what NLNG, have outlined in terms of their social responsibility.
I beg your pardon. That cannot be true. We live in the most peaceful. We live in the most peaceful host community in Nigeria, and that is Bonny. This is a community that we have provided electricity for 24 hours. We have more fidelity of supply of electricity in the average house in Bonny than in Leo August's house.
Yeah, but
now, let me say this: we have invested deeply. We have invested deeply in our communities. As of today, we have also promised the community in a new memorandum of understanding 3 billion every year into a development fund for that same community for 25 years running. So questions about community development, if there's an example, an epitome want to show it is Nigeria LNG.
Yes.
All right.
Now, let me step in. Hold on,
Yes.
hold on,
What
hold
are the issues about
First, let me take that issue in respect of your social corporate responsibilities. The gas product that you are using today is not only from Bonny. It comes from the whole Niger Delta
We
region.
buy it,
Please,
Leo.
please,
We buy
can
it.
you let me land?
Yes.
It's from the whole Niger Delta region that is saddled with these oil problems. But it is important, and thank God you raised a very fundamental issue. A committee was set up between NDDC and LNG. Sat to agree on terms and conditions on how this money should be arranged and paid. At almost the concluding stage, this is information before me also, they backed out.
Why?
That is something I don't know. You know, so for us,
it's obvious why they backed out.
Yeah.
So what is obvious? Why did they back out?
So why? I mean, I wasn't there, but you can guess.
Yeah.
Their contention is that the provision about contributing a percentage of their budget, annual budget, does not apply to the LNG. And if the court has affirmed in their favor, like I said, and you seek to amend the law to include them, the parties should sit down and reach an agreement.
I did agree with you.
Prior to amendment,
yeah,
because
all right.
and it is not for NDDC. NDDC should not be a party to the discussion because it also looks.
Gentlemen, sorry, just a minute, Honorable Leo, let's clarify this.
Yes.
Assuming the matter ended at the Court of Appeal and there were no further steps to go to the Supreme Court, that is the law, that is the decision reached that all the parties are supposed to abide by. A matter doesn't necessarily have to go to the Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Before it becomes.
I agree with you.
That's the nature of our stare decisis.
Exactly.
Okay? Now, but another point that I would like you to respond to.
Yeah.
AFAM says, and that again is also obvious, that, look, if the parties sat down to discuss the terms and agree, that would have been an executive responsibility.
Beautiful.
And that brought it over to the legislature.
Pleasure.
Why did it appear that the House or the sponsor of the bill tended to have circumvented or circumnavigated that executive first step of seeking to negotiate? The business of negotiation is not between the House and the shareholders of Nigeria LNG. Why did the sponsor or sponsors seek to circumnavigate the executive in the negotiation process to say, look, agree on this rather than waiting for them and say, look, public hearing, come, here you are.
Yeah, but let me also probably bring you a little bit back. This issue has not been an issue of just yesterday. That's right. It's a long-running issue. And I have said time without number that these even incentives, like you all know, have all expired. This particular amendment does not even affect the train 7 and 8 that they are shouting all over the press about. Hold on, please. It is about what you are operating at this present condition. So, if they start at a particular time and they couldn't reach a conclusion, because they set up a committee, and you are aware you set up a committee where you people met severally in this committee. At the end of the day, they backed out. For me, as a lawmaker, I know that the NDDC Act is an act in which the National Assembly, the only act where we vetoed the president, who refused to assent to it. It becomes important, very, very important, because the first even issue here is about whether they are gas processing company. And he knows that the Court of Appeal stated very clearly that, yes, LNG is a gas processing company. And here it is in black and white that gas processing companies must contribute their own quotas to the development of NDDC, to the development of the geopolitical zone. When you say you are probably developing a host community, there is nothing wrong with that. It is your social corporate responsibility. But there are a lot of other zones that NDDC also is looking after. And it becomes important that these funds you are talking about, you think it is your profit. It is not. These are all deductibles. All right? And if other companies are paying it, why are you finding it so difficult?
Okay, let me bring Dr. Kudo here, because I just want to look at NLNG's social responsibility. Because if you are, operating within an area, it behoves on you to, of course, make contributions by way of paying levies to the commission, that is responsible, for that. But again, someone did say that the story of Bonny is like a tale of two cities, and I'm quoting somebody who lives in Bonny. The last time I was in Bonny, just after Peterside Crossing, it was just like a fallen city. You go to Anelga, the same thing. Onelga, is one of the largest oil producing in River State. You go there, it's the same thing. So now, people say that NLNG is appealing to sentiments rather than, looking at the devastation that is being meted onto the region where you operate.
Yes, we have to appeal to sentiments, but we also have to appeal to facts. We cannot run from facts. Facts are stubborn. The thing is, NLNG is being targeted. NLNG buys gas. And I had said, you haven't questioned Leo. Why is petrochemical not being charged the same? Why are those who are involved in electricity not being charged the same? Why are those who are involved in using gas for fertilizer not being charged the same? Why is NLNG being singled out? Gas, yes, but it's not the only one. Number two, he mentions the fact that this has nothing to do with Train 7. It has everything to do with Train 7.
How?
The moment we pass this amendment and essentially abrogate the act, because the act will be without the guarantees and assurances, it is actually postponed. It's finished. Yeah? Then the investors' confidence is totally destroyed. They are the ones that we're relying upon to bring in $25 billion. And let me also say this. Luckily, he admits that some of the shareholders are those also functioning, at least their Nigerian counterparts in the Niger Delta. Shell pays the NDDC levy. Total pays the NDDC levy. ENI pays the NDDC levy. Now, Nigeria LNG goes and buys gas upon which all the NDDC levies have been paid. And then you ask NLNG to pay another 3%. What are you doing? Double taxation.
All right. You are not buying gas. You are buying gas from NNPC. Please, sir. You see, let's try and call a spade a spade. You may end up probably saying that what I'm saying is wrong. You know that the price at which you are buying this gas is not what the other companies that are producing. In Nigeria, for the production are buying this gas, you are buying for export. And I think, much as I would probably want us to be fair to each other, you see, I see this negative campaign as very, very wrong steps. This is a project everybody is interested in. Shell you are talking about here has only 25% interest in this company. Now, as a nation, you know that you have kept some funds behind for these particular projects. Hold on, sir. And if that is the situation, why are you now trying to say that the 3% you will contribute, the 3% of your budget that you will contribute to the development of this zone will destroy a project of 25 billion? I call that very cheap blackmail, as far as I'm concerned.
Let me just illustrate. Maybe it's very difficult to understand, but I think maybe the way that you will feel it is pretty simple. It's like an egg. The guarantees are like guarantees and assurance. It's like liking it to an egg. Now, it doesn't matter whether you puncture a little hole in that egg. It's broken. It is that guarantee and assurance that we are trying to protect. That is what the rule of law has given. Now, the moment we violate the rule of law by puncturing the guarantees and assurances, it is finished.
That is without due process. And the
Without due process,
the due process says, listen, let the shareholders sit down, negotiate, reach an agreement, and then proceed. There's one issue, though. I mean, because if you under international, energy law, you'll find that what we are dealing with here, I mean, there is insistence on what you already have in the law. Those are referred to usually as stabilization clauses.
Exactly.
The alternative will be renegotiation clauses. So we have no idea why Nigeria settled for stabilization rather than renegotiation clauses. But in a sense, you can imply that, okay, there are still renegotiation clauses to say, let the parties sit down to negotiate. We remember what happened in oil-producing entities like Libya. I mean, some governments, have been rattled, by the governments of the IOCs, where those companies are based, overthrow them and so on and so forth on account of stabilization clauses, or where there was nationalization of those oil companies on account of what the threat were, as Leo Ogo has indicated, obnoxious clauses embedded in the stabilization clauses. But one point, Honorable Leo Ogo,
yes.
Let's say from a business perspective, and this is already what is there in the piece of legislation. Does it make any business sense to require a company to pay 3% of its budget, not of its profits, budget? Because your budget will indicate, your operating costs. You are not even sure yet whether, of course, you will have a return, on your investment or on your budget. But here you're saying 3% of your budget. Could that be looked at?
It is the enabling law, but it is the enabling law of our land.
It's what we're seeking to interrogate. It's there already. This is all part of the discussion.
But be also mindful of the fact that this act you see, which is these incentives and all the things you are saying, are more acts that were written by the IOCs. All right?
Yeah, but we have them as our laws. No, but we have them as our laws.
I told you from the beginning that they are decrees. And if I wake up as a lawmaker and I find a decree to be obnoxious, because the provision of Section 315 brings it into conformity.
As existing law.
As existing law, are you saying I lack the right, the privilege and the opportunity of amending such laws?
Okay, let me pause you.
Yes,
No,
Yes, he will continue.
I'm just saying, just hold on a second before we bring another guy, because this is very important from the business perspective. Look, why the law is there, as you have indicated, of course, there was an override of the president's veto. Why would it be 3% of a company's operating budget?
Not profit.
Budget. I don't know. Listen, I mean, if you run businesses, 3% of your budget, you haven't started operating your budget, so look, 3% of it, slice it off.
You might find out that even 3% of the budget is far lower, even in the end, in respect of this particular budget of LNG, all right, than even taking into the profits. Because if you look at the 3% of the budget, it's far, far lower when compared to the profit. But let me tell you, you might probably ask, why did the National Assembly took this step? You realize that this zone have suffered so much depredation. They have suffered so much environmental pollution. These people are the same people that eat polluted fish, drink polluted water in the interest of the Project Nigeria. And the government in itself decided to set up an interventionist agency to support these people that live here. And I don't see anything wrong with it. Even I probably want to say that 3% for me is even on the lower side when you compare the margins of what these oil companies are making from this particular area.
All right, let me quickly bring into our conversation our guest from our Lagos Network Center, of course, Victor Eresia Eke. He's a former Chief Officer, Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas, NLNG, and yes, Chief Financial Officer. Mr. Eresia Eke, thank you for joining us from Lagos. And quickly, I don't know what your response will be, but do you find the act, the NLNG setting up, the act setting up the NLNG Act obnoxious, and does the legislature have the right to amend it?
Use is not obnoxious. I don't think obnoxious is an appropriate word. The NLNG Act was there for a purpose. Let's have it in perspective. I mean, I've been listening carefully to the legislator defending it stoutly. For 30 years, between 1969 and the very first cargo, 30 years passed. There wasn't a single LNG plant here. Today, we're lucky to have an LNG plant that is producing, that has expanded, and is adding value. The Bonny Island plant is Africa's largest single industrial plant of that nature. So we have to, you get and give in return. So you have agreed on something, you stick to it. That's what gentlemen do. My problem is in Nigeria, we tend to always want to reinvent the wheel. Why do we want to reinvent the wheel? Do it exactly the way everybody does elsewhere to attract investment. The last investment, I think, was done, 2007 when we had Train 6. Since then, there's been no train built in 10 years, no train built. When we talk about it, when we still have two other entities that have been on the drawing board for nearly 20 years now, 17 years. When I'm talking about Brass and Olokola LNG, why do we have that? Simply because the climate is not right. International investment will go to only places where the enabling environment is right. We've done something right. Just keep replicating it. We should stop doing things that are uniquely Nigerian simply because it is convenient to do so. And in my humble view, there's quite a lot we can do to move it forward. So the LNG Act, as far as should be allowed to stay exactly as it is without having to try to tweak it here and there. It has served its purpose, and I don't see why we should actually change it. What I think legislative energies should actually be spent on is saying, Why have we in 70 years not had all the other plants? We should do something about it. And there's quite a lot we can do about it. Create the enabling environment to ensure a localized build, brass LNG build, Train 7 comes on stream. Because these windows of opportunities will not last forever. I think, let me pause there. I think you can ask for that question if you want to.
All right, well, Mr. Eresia, thank you very much for your perspective. And by the way, this about some weeks ago, we actually also discussed the Bonny LNG project as well as the Oke LNG project. And one of our guests on that occasion was former Group Managing Director of NNPC, that's Dr. Gas Obaseke. Plus, other guests who joined us from different locations, indicating that it was important, of course, to prioritize Train 7 of Bonny LNG, and then move on to Brass, and then to OK, because OK probably has the biggest of the challenges. Now, you say that, well, let the law stay the way it is, but you already have embedded in the law an opportunity for an amendment based, of course, on the concurrence of all the shareholders. One of the key things that we've also discussed here, there's a guest here to say, look, a negotiation should have first taken place in the executive branch and then the other shareholders before proceeding to the legislature. One question I raised earlier was, look, what is the business sense in saying I should have off 3% of my budget for CSR? As a former CFO, that's Chief Financial Officer, how does that, or how would that normally impact on any business if ab initio 3% of what you are budgeting is straight away devoted to CSR when you don't know whether you break even or otherwise? I know that the oil industry has a very complicated accounting process.
The science behind the 3%, clearly, I don't know behind the 3%. I think that has been done for quite a while. And I like the whole idea of actually NDDC as an interventionist thing. The whole idea was that, oh, these guys in the oil and gas are polluting the space or whatever, and degradation. Let us now have something to compensate. So let's have an interventionist stuff. I don't know. We can now look at the track record of NDDC. Have they done exactly what they expected to do? And then you can equally weigh that against what is LNG doing in that space. I don't know, they do have a program, and if they execute that program, they're talking about a mini Dubai in Bonny Island. If that happens, probably that is good. The point is that they don't necessarily need a legislative gun on their heads to get these things done. What you basically need is you say, oh, can you cooperate with NDDC and NLNG? Can you cooperate? Even while I was there, I mean, there was a lot of talk about cooperation, and I'm sure that Kudo is there to confirm that what level of cooperation there is. And once that cooperation is there, you don't need a 3% or any percent. What you do need is development in the area, like the legislator rightly said. And I think if people deserve that development, they should get it. But it doesn't have to be that. The original spirit behind it was for oil producers. Let it be said clear. LNG is midstream. It's like a refinery. It's like any other of such plant. So it's right in the middle of the pack. And therefore, we should be consistent with our own rules. The world is watching. Nigeria is not there in isolation, just doing its own thing. So we don't want to be a laughing stock because we're doing what we want to do here. We should just do things right and do it the way it's done everywhere else.
Mr. Eresia, let me come back to Dr. Kudo. I don't know, looking at this act and the purpose, for it and for setting up the NLNG, do you think that purpose has been served? Because we do know that sometimes when these exemptions are granted, it is basically to allow the venture to recoup,
exactly.
the investment. Has NLNG recouped its investment, initial investment?
I guess I have reeled out some figures here. I've also told you how much we invested as a nation and what we have got back in return. How did we do that? We did that because we were reinvesting. We grew from a 2-train operation to a 6-train operation. That is how much that Nigeria LNG has developed. Now, let me also say that much of what is coming out of NLNG now, 70% of it goes to the government. So how else do you want to be received?
70?
70%, because 49% plus all the taxes that we have mentioned. We've said already that we don't have it. We're not enjoying any more tax holidays. That is long expired. We're paying fully.
So you do.
All we're asking. Now, just a moment. Let me try to respond. You know, all we're saying is the rule of law needs to be obeyed for the benefit of our country. Otherwise, investors will think that we are lawless. And if they think so, then investments will not come. This is the main argument. In terms of supporting our local communities, I mean, we are already voluntarily, no one asked us. We set aside 60 billion.
For 17 years, this act has served the purpose of the NLNG, and you think it could go on in perpetuity?
What do you mean? Who is NLNG?
That is the question.
Who is NLNG?
And that's what you have to
NLNG is
answer.
essentially the federal government.
Very good.
Yes, essentially the federal government. So anything you're doing against Nigeria LNG is doing against Nigeria.
It is the same federal government that asked the NLNG to make some, payment to NIMASA, which you also, did not comply with.
Yeah, that matter is sub judice.
That matter is sub judice.
Okay,
what is so wrong in
Can
obeying
I
the law?
come in here, please? Can I come in here?
Honorable Leo,
Yeah, let me advise. Doctor, I see you like somebody who has the interest of LNG at heart. But I can tell you that most of these guarantees you are talking about has not in any way been tampered with this amendment. This is purely a levy. Hold on, sir. It's a levy which is allowed because your levies have expired. Your
Tax
time
holiday
has expired. Yeah. But let me advise, and this advice is this, that, you see, we must appreciate that at a particular time, all these products will finish, and everybody investing in this business is interested in the profit margin that he or she is going to make from it. If today there is no more gas in Nigeria, Shell, all the other companies like probably we are fighting for their interest today, will not spend a day in this country. I think it is important that as a nation, the only major source of revenue to every government is tax. And when I see some of these arguments, that, oh, this thing will drive this thing away, it will do this, it will do that, I think my heart bleeds. Bleeds because we are not being sincere to ourselves. And I really don't know where it will take us.
How would you respond to the statement made by Dr. Kudo Eke? Of course, for the benefit of our viewers, he's, excuse me, he's General Manager, External Relations of Bonny LNG. That's why he's speaking the way. Yes, Nigeria LNG. That's why he's speaking the way he's speaking. So, but the point is, look, this is like an ad hominem piece of legislation. It's targeting the LNG, Nigeria LNG, ad hominem, and yet, in the NDDC Act, you have gas processing companies. It's also raised the point that you have those who are in petrochemicals, those who are also utilizing gas for other purposes, fertilizer and so on and so forth. Well, of course, that's going to kick up quite some more dust. What will be done in this particular regard?
Well, first, I think he has given us some very, very good information. All right, and we are going to work on those informations.
That's always a twist.
That is it. There's nothing wrong with what he has just passed.
Okay, in conclusion, let's bring in Mr. Victor Ramasele from Lagos. What do you think could be the way out to resolve, this controversy?
There's something called peace talks. I think it's good that we have a legislator in the room, so and I'm sure after this program they should shake hands and keep talking about it. But I believe if we can just keep doing things exactly the way others do it everywhere else in the world, it will be great. And I think the easiest way really is to, if possible, drop off this whole idea of the NDDC thing, and you can tweak the NNPC Act if you want to, but tweak it in a way that benefits all parties, and benefits Nigeria, and then benefits investors. That is where we should land. But right now, I think, given where we are, that we're trying to dig ourselves out of a recession, this is the timing really is not really the best. We want to attract as many investors into Nigeria as we can. And I think whatever we do, we should just bear that in mind.
Well, Mr. Ramasele, once again, thank you very much. Afam Osigwe, Look, why some persons would ask, why all this bogey of, oh, we want foreign investors, you know, they don't come, so we have to be careful. The issues have already been outlined. Do we need, you know, to continue to frighten ourselves, you know, by the fact that foreign investment will either stall, you know, or take flight? If things are to be done properly, couldn't we just proceed to do them properly, Mazi?
Well, I mean, the two go hand in hand. It's a mono economy, we're dependent on oil, and we'll be deceiving ourselves thinking we can go it alone. And it's the IOCs that are the main JV partners to the NNPC, which acts on behalf of Nigeria. And like we said earlier, if a law has stated the procedure for doing it, what stops us from doing that? Why make so much noise, raise so much dust, when we can achieve that in a table and hold discussions and then proceed to draft the bill? And then why target a particular company? Why not make it a broad-based thing? If we intend to have it, companies that process gas, then bring everybody on stream so that this thing will be an even-handed thing and not be seen that they are targeting NLNG probably because they believe that they have a huge budget.
But is it the case, again, now returning to our legal system, the fact that you have a provision in the NLNG Act doesn't mean that a subsequent piece of legislation can't tamper with it. And therefore, if you had an omnibus piece of legislation that deals with some of the issues already contained therein, I mean, that would just be fair and fine.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, but the point that you know, our farm has raised, look, why the apparent stampede?
Because this whole discussion has gone on for almost about 10 years plus. It is not just a discussion of yesterday. They know what we are saying, that it is a very, very long way. Even when Senel Brown was there, this whole discussion was ongoing. And they have actually taken this firm position that, no, they are not gas processing company, they won't do this, they won't do that. And we have no option than to make sure that, you know, it is spelled out in black and white in their act. You know, so for us, I think what we are doing is making sure that they respect the laws of our land.
Okay, Mr. Kudo, if this law, if this amendment, you know, sees the light of day, if it passes through, the Senate concurs and it gets the accent, will the NLNG comply or would you seek legal redress?
If you listen to everything I've said, it's about the rule of law. There are provisions within the Act today that has recommended if there's going to be any distortions, any changes, how it ought to be done. Let us do it that way. That's exactly what Victor was also saying.
Could you secondly, yes, what would be the next step for the NLNG should that happen?
I said the rule of law. We obey the rule of law.
All right.
But the devastation on the Nigerian economy should be very obvious. Now, we have NNPC representing the federal government on this venture. NNPC is positive on the side of Nigeria LNG because it understands the business of oil and gas. The Honorable Minister of Petroleum is positive on the side of NLNG because he understands the business of oil and gas. The Pengassin, the most elitist group in the oil and gas industry, made up of largely Nigerians, is supportive of the Nigeria LNG position.
But the National Assembly that is representing the larger majority of Nigerians do not understand the act. But I'm afraid...
And there are no incentives, there are no provisions in the Act that stipulates that even where we need to amend the law, we must sit down with you people. Because I brought the Act here. I'll give it to you so that you can
gentlemen,
show it
I'm afraid...
Section 7, please.
Gentlemen, just wait. I think the Honorable Leo, the point was made that such initial discussions should be between the executive branch, that's by implication the executive branch and the other shareholders. And then plus, of course, the opportunity of representation at your public hearing. That's one. But gentlemen, that's the much that we can take in the course of this conversation. We'd like to thank all of you. Of course, this is a matter that obviously will take on some other point in future. We'd like to thank former Secretary General of Nigerian Bar Association, Mazi Alpha Mosugwe. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thanks for having me.
We also would like to thank Dr. Kudo Eresia Eke, General Manager, External Relations, Nigeria LNG, that's at Bonny. Kudo Eke, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. It's in the hands of Nigerians now.
All right. So we also would like to thank the minority leader of the House of Reps, Honorable Leo Ogo. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much.
From our Lagos Network Studios, I would like to appreciate Mr. Victor Remosole, former Chief Finance Officer of Nigeria LNG at Bonny. Thank you for your contribution.
And a request of Remosole that both of you shake hands, but I would like you to do that once you step out of the studio. And
differences at all.
All right, let's quickly take